Welcome back to TYT. Joining us now is Cenk Uygur, who is running for president and challenging Joe Biden in the Democratic primary. Cenk, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Anna.
So I wanted to have you on to give us some updates on how your primary campaign is going. There was a lot of drama with some states refusing to allow you on the ballots. We're gonna get to that in just a moment, but there was also some good news in regard to states that will allow you on their primary ballot. So tell us about the states that have decided to do the right thing here.
Yeah, there's so much bad news, I forgot that there was good news. You're right. Texas, Oklahoma,
wow.
Vermont, Minnesota, and they said it wasn't possible. Okay, so
4 states.
4 states so far and counting. And look, seriously, a lot of people thought, oh, you won't be able to get on a single state. You're not a natural born citizen. I know we're going to talk about our lawsuit in a minute, but they were wrong. They were wrong about the process. They're wrong about how you get on ballots, and they're wrong about the constitutional issue. People who are like amateur, amateurs online think that they know everything because of 8th grade. You just don't. This like, who knows the Federal Election Commission decision on Hassan? Not that Hassan, another Hassan, right? That allows you to run. You don't know that, so why are you pretending you do? I feel like I want to say to all my critics, but yes, we're on in 4 states.
Well, look, to engage in full disclosure, because I think it's important. I was a little salty about your run in the beginning.
No.
I think it was pretty obvious to the audience, even though I did my best to conceal it.
No, it was not that good.
I'm not good at concealing the way I feel about things.
No,
but
not your strength.
I've since changed my mind because even though you winning the primary is obviously a long shot, I think that the legal battle that you want to engage in here on behalf of naturalized citizens is important, and I'm curious to see where it goes. So talk to me a little bit about the lawsuit your campaign filed in South Carolina.
Yeah. So South Carolina takes $20,000 from each of the candidates, and then the state party decides who is a bona fide candidate and who isn't. Okay, so now South Carolina was actually a little bit better than Florida and North Carolina, Tennessee, and now Massachusetts that have all said, me, Marianne Williamson, and Dean Phillips, and everyone else on planet Earth are not qualified to run in the Democratic primaries. So 4 states have said, no, we don't care what our voters think. We don't want to know. We're not interested. It's going to be Joe Biden, and we don't care how badly he's, but we don't care about anything. You're banned. None of you are allowed to run. Okay,
can I just interject real quick? So guys, understand how insane that is, okay? Because we're talking about, take Cenk out of it for a minute. If you want to make the argument, well, he can't run, he's a naturalized citizen. Okay, fine. But what argument are you gonna make in regard to Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson also being barred from the primary ballots in these states?
So look, I don't know if we'll have time to talk about my experience running because it's so interesting, and I've got more comments about Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips than I do about myself, because the way that the press has treated them is revelatory. It shows you exactly what the press is about, but it also shows you what the Democratic Party is about. So Dean Phillips is a sitting US congressman. If he runs for his re-election in his congressional district, the Democratic Party loves him, and he's a beloved incumbent, and that's how he was treated his whole life, right? Or at least since he's been involved in politics. But the minute he runs for president, he's persona non grata. And you're not allowed to challenge Joe Biden, and you're not even allowed on the ballot as a sitting US congressman. That's insane. And then Marianne Williamson ran last time, was in the debates last time, and has been polling higher than anyone outside of Trump, Biden, and DeSantis the entirety of the election, and not allowed on the ballot.
It's insane.
In those 4 states. So 4 states have banned everybody. 4 states have allowed everyone, including myself, right? There's a lot of states left to decide. And then there are the states like South Carolina where only I've been banned. And so in South Carolina, to answer your original question, they said, we're not gonna give you the $20,000 back. So we're ripping off little old ladies who donated to your campaign. And we've made a constitutional decision that you're not qualified because what, your constitutional law scholars? No, they're not. They don't know anything, right? But I get it. Okay, fine. You made that decision, no problem. That allows me to bring it to court and challenge your decision, which is exactly what we're doing. So we're doing it on core constitutional grounds. So I've talked to you before about the 14th Amendment. And if you get into the details a little bit more, we're making a case that the 14th Amendment explicitly repealed the natural born citizen clause because it is the only natural and born and naturalized are only mentioned in the Constitution in those two places. Must be a natural born citizen. Then the 14th Amendment says, no, born or naturalized, you have due process and equal rights, okay? So we think, and we make an excellent case for other court cases that show that amendments are explicitly repealed without saying, oh, by the way, we are repealing that part of the amendment. In fact, the 14th Amendment repeals the 3/5 clause that black people are 3/5 and never mentions it. So, but it is still considered an explicit repeal of it. And then we have a great case for an implicit repeal. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on the legal issues. We have an excellent case for a First Amendment issue, not only for me, but a South Carolina Democratic voter who's a supporter of mine has joined the case.
Oh, wow.
And now we are suing together, and he's saying, how about my First Amendment rights? You're not letting me vote. You're taking my voice. This is the person I want to vote for, and you're not letting me do it. I have rights.
And that's important because in order to make this case, you need standing in South Carolina. And you have a voter who's making the case that he wants to support you and isn't given an opportunity in a country that's supposed to have a democratic process in place.
Right, and of course I have standing because I'm a bona fide candidate running for office and they're not letting me, right? And so we both do. And then the last issue is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That doesn't affect whether you could be president, but it affects whether you should be on the ballot or not. And it very, very clearly says you cannot discriminate based on national origin. So now whether you can discriminate in terms of serving as president is a constitutional issue the courts are gonna settle. But even if we win that small part of the case on the Civil Rights Act, that means that any naturalized citizen can run. Okay, and guys, last thing on this, Anna, when the better that I do, the better that any of these candidates do, it makes the Supreme Court's job harder if they're gonna say, no, we're gonna discriminate, because then they have to say, we're not only discriminating against Cenk, but we're discriminating against all the people that wanna vote for him.
That is an interesting argument. It's the other thing that I'm curious to see is how the Supreme Court, if they do take this up, how they are going to decide the case, because we're talking about Supreme Court justices, most of whom are conservative and believe in the literal interpretation of the Constitution, just interpreting it based on the plain language of the Constitution. And the plain language, based on the way you're interpreting it, is the way that I would assume the Supreme Court would interpret it, right?
Look, if I love that they have that principle of plain meaning of the law, okay? Because there's no argument at all for the other side if you're looking at plain meaning. It says all persons born or naturalized have due process and equal protection. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. In fact, if you wanted to write a repeal of the natural born clause, this is almost exactly how you would write it. And I'll put it in layman's terms. If you put in an amendment in the Constitution that said, you're not allowed to eat donuts, okay? And they meant, oh, we didn't mean that. We meant you're not allowed to carry a switchblade. But you wrote, you're not allowed to eat donuts. Plain meaning, you're not allowed to eat donuts. It's over, sorry. That's what the words mean, words have meaning, right? And in this case, it is super clear, it is super explicit. There's no question about it at all. Naturalized citizens have the same exact rights. And in fact, the Supreme Court has ruled that way, just not on the presidential case. So honestly, I don't even understand I know, I get it. There's lots of law professors who are like, well, no, that's, if equal doesn't really mean equal. And they're like, well, what about, for example, your age? You have to be 35. Does equal mean that? But it didn't say anything about age. It said naturalized, equal. Again, you almost couldn't write it any better if you were trying to repeal that section of the Constitution. And it doesn't matter because it's the absolute plain meaning of the language.